Hello and welcome. This is a podcast explaining Ukraine by UkraineWorld.org. We continue our podcasts about the war which Russia started against Ukraine. This series is brought to you by Internews Ukraine and Ukraine Crisis Media Center, two Ukrainian media NGOs. My name is Volodymyr Yermolenko. I'm chief editor of UkraineWorld.org. We are making this podcast with Tetyana Ogarkova, who is in charge of international outreach at Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Hello, Tanya.
Hello, Volodymyr.
Before we start, let me remind you that you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/UkraineWorld. So we continue our chronicle of Russian war, Russian invasion. And the first thing which strikes me still that how much, for example, in foreign press, in foreign media, there is this terminology which doesn't mention Russia, which we see Ukraine crisis. Still, people are using this Ukraine crisis, which just irritates Ukrainians, make them nervous, make them frustrated. And as we repeat, calling this Ukraine crisis is the same as calling the start of the World War II, a Poland crisis, or Soviet tanks in Czechoslovakia, a Czechoslovakia crisis. So you cannot put the blame on the victim in this terminology. We see Ukraine war in Ukraine, etc., as if people are afraid of mentioning the key perpetrator of this. So our suggestion is to talk about Russian invasion, Russian-Ukraine war, Russian
war against Ukraine.
Russian war against Ukraine, etc. What do you think?
Yeah, indeed, this is very important to name the things, to name the war, and what really started on a 28th day today, so almost a month. This war started, and but in fact we do know that Russia attacked Ukraine many years ago, at least 8 years ago, back in 2014 with Crimea, with Donbass. But it was what we call now a local war in Donbass. But now what we have a full-scale invasion. And Russia calls it military operation. And what we see in their media, they are calling that operation. What do you think about this Z letter? Designed to name this campaign, this military operation in Russia. We still have some hypotheses about that. Some people say maybe it's linked to Zelensky because the name of our president is Zelensky. That's why we see this letter Z on their tanks, on their planes, everywhere. And we also see some military machines with letter V. So maybe Volodymyr Zelensky. We still don't know why they are marking their cars and their military tanks and all kind of engines with that sign. But for them, this is operation of denazification, purification, and so on. And for us, it's a full-scale war. And we do hope that for our international partners, this is also should be called war, because we see this traditional war started 28 years ago, and which is still going on. But what we see, let's talk about military. What we see on the ground. I think that the main thing to mention here is that for many days already, maybe even weeks already, we don't see any important strategic maneuver but by Russian army. What they are doing, they are in lack of resources. First of all, human resources, because there's some logistics in which is not functioning properly. But the problem is that they are still on our ground and they are attacking Ukraine by air. In Mariupol, in Kyiv. Today, let's talk about these two attacks on Kyiv this night. They attacked two different districts, Svetoshiny and Shevchenkivsky district. So Svetoshiny is not so very much central, but Shevchenkivsky is much closer to the center. Several civilians wounded and some dead as well. And this atmosphere of terror in Kyiv, it continues because people who stayed in Kyiv, and we know that approximately 1/2 of population of Kyiv, they stayed in their apartments and they live from day to another, thinking if the next time it will be their turn just to receive a missile in their apartment. But this is not massive bombing like in Kharkiv. They still, for example, Russian army now, they are still shelling at Kharkiv, at Mariupol. and Mykolaiv as well in the south. But Kyiv is not so very much shelled, but this climate of terror is still here because Kyiv is very important because it is capital. And what we see now is that at least Ukrainian army is communicating that these northern suburbs or these satellite towns in the north, Irpin, Bucha, Gostomel, Vorzel, that Ukrainian army seems to have some significant progress in these cities. At least we've seen this communication about Ukrainian police starting working properly in Irpin. What does it mean? It means that Irpin is liberated from Russian army. And now they are talking about that Russian army, Russian forces are surrounded in Irpin, Bucha and Gostomel. This is the most recent information we've got. So it means that maybe Ukrainian army has chances to be successful in this area, and this is very important for us because this is capital once again. And if they are out of Kyiv, it will be good news for us.
Yes, we have seen this report about the encirculating Russian troops in these Kyiv suburbs yesterday. We still, it's hard to have a real confirmation of that because the Ukrainian army is very careful in communicating this. Of course, we are at war, so basically a lot of what is going on is beyond the media radars. Let's be serious about that. But there was information already yesterday that the Russian troops have been encirculated, and we will see what it means, what it brings, because obviously, this is one of the most important things to take Russians away from Kyiv suburbs. Because if they put, for example, Grads in Hostomel, in Vorzel, in Bucha, and just shell Kyiv, no air defense system can protect the city.
And let's explain that Grads, they are able to reach 21 kilometers. So you just put a Grad somewhere in 21 kilometers from central Kyiv. It's not so far away, and you can shell really in central
Kyiv. But Kyiv is huge, so you can shell, for example, residential areas like Obolonyo, Troyeshina, right? And be just far away. That's what happened in Kharkiv, by the way.
And yesterday we were very unhappy about the news coming from Brovary, our city where we used to live before the war. And there is a plant already bombed by Russian army. We don't know exactly what happened, but it is really just several kilometers from our apartment. So this was a kind of very worrying news for us personally, because we do know that Brovary is pretty well protected now, but with Grads and what other kind of military systems, they are able to reach Brovary. And Brovary is already at 15 kilometers from Kyiv, from the east. So this attack from the east is still possible, and it is incredible. When you look on map, you can see that they were able to reach Kyiv from the east. It's quite a long distance. What we know that there are kind of small groups of Russians there, but we know that there are a lot of villages already in 20 kilometers from Brovary where people were evacuated just because there were already Russian tanks and a lot of shelling and a lot of all things linked to occupation. So people were evacuated to Brovary, and then some of them further to Kyiv or to other cities.
One of our colleagues, actually, we lost a connection with her, and we don't know where she was. We didn't yet talk to her, but hopefully today she said that she was evacuated. She was evacuated to Brovary, so most probably it was near this district. And during these days she couldn't communicate. She was just sending us SMS. So she's one of the persons from our team from UkraineWorld. I hope that when she's able to speak, we'll speak to her. But just to give our readers an idea what's happening, for example, in Kyiv, because I spent the past week in Kyiv, and will come back very soon. It's impossible. I think it's impossible to take Kyiv by land forces because it's very much fortified. It looks like a fortress with barricades on every possible street with territorial defense. I cannot really imagine tanks or armored vehicles going through Kyiv, through the streets of Kyiv. They will be exterminated by all those people who are with arms, etc. So what Russians are doing is basically shelling from the sky.
Yeah, but let's look at Chernihiv, for example. They started Chernihiv several weeks ago already, and their tactics, what we see on the ground, is that they shell from distance from the very beginning. They shell many times just to make people afraid, to create these chaotic movements of citizens, of civil inhabitants of the city, and then they start to attack. And what they did in Chernihiv, for example, we talk little about Chernihiv, but this city is also another suffering city now. We talk a lot about Mariupol, but Chernihiv is also without electricity and water and heating for already more than 1 week. And today, the bad news is that Russians, they exploded the bridge between Chernihiv and Kyiv. It means this is big road going to Chernihiv, and the bridge is crossing the Desna. So it means for the city that they will not be able to receive any kind of humanitarian aid, I mean in terms of something to eat, etc., and they will not be able to evacuate people. And that's extremely bad news, because we know that the tactics of Russians is to encircle cities and then to create this humanitarian catastrophe. And this is extremely bad news for us and for people who are still in Chernihiv. I remember several days ago we received news about an American citizen who died in Chernihiv in shelling, and he was there because he was married to a Ukrainian woman, and he was invited certainly by his government, the American government, to leave the city, but he was not able to do so because he would not leave his wife behind. She was ill or something like that, and so he is dead now in Chernihiv. And it's a pity because Chernihiv, like Kyiv, is a very, very ancient city with beautiful churches, beautiful monastery, very green city. It's like a symbol of Ukraine, and we are really worried about what's going on there, and we do hope that Ukrainian army will be able to liberate it soon.
Indeed, Chernihiv is also much older than Moscow or St. Petersburg or many other Russian cities, and it's really coming to in the deep medieval times, and that's what Russians are now trying to destroy with their, again, inhumane and barbaric and medieval in the bad sense of the term means. Let's talk about Mariupol. You mentioned it. We're trying to collect testimonies of people who escaped these horrors, and I will read you one of the testimony from a woman called Nadezhda Sukharukova from her Facebook post. Just several fragments. Fire has swallowed 5 stores of a building and is slowly chewing the 6th one. The fire in the room is delicate like in a fireplace. Black, charred houses stay without glass in their windows. I am sure that I will die soon. This is the matter of days. People are constantly waiting for death in this city. I only want this death to be not very scary. 3 days ago, a friend of my nephew came to us and said the missile hit the fire department. It tore off a woman's hand, leg, and head. My wish is that parts of my body stay with me even after the airstrike. When we asked 2 policemen what we should do with the body of our friend's grandma, they advised to put her on the balcony. Interesting, how many balconies are hiding dead bodies now? Our courtyard is covered with several layers of ash, plastic, and steel fragments. I try not to look at the big steel object which flew into the playground. A missile or a mine, I don't know. In a window or 3rd floor, I see someone's face, and I turn away. Even the wind is dead. Some people stay here, however. They are lying near the house and on a parking place, covered with their clothes. I don't want to look at them. I am afraid to recognize people I know. All city's life is smoldering in the underground. People are still in the undergrounds of Mariupol. Every day makes it difficult for them to survive. They have no water, food, electricity. They can't even go outside because of constant shelling. Mariupol people have to leave. Help them. Tell this story. Let the world know.
Yeah, this is something extremely dramatic, and we know that thousands of people, more than 40,000 of people were lucky enough to get out of the city, and we received this news. Still more than 300,000 are still inside Mariupol, but personally I cannot even tell how happy I was 2 days ago when I received the news that our colleague, a journalist who was in Mariupol, and we lost any connection with her for 2 weeks already, and then we were almost sure that we recognized her face and the face of her son on a video shared several hours before the drama theater was bombed. But 2 days ago we received news that she is already out of the city. She is alive with her son. She's still close to Mariupol. I will not name the village, but she's very close, at, let us say, 10 kilometers, something like that, in a village controlled by Russians. I took contact with her. She is alive. She plans to escape. She plans to take the road to Zaporizhzhia, but she needs driver for that car and surely money. So what we are doing now, we are trying to collect money. That maybe is the simplest thing, to collect money, but the much more difficult is to find driver brave enough to bring somebody. And she has to change the paper, her identity card, to somebody else, because she is quite known in the city like a journalist and activist. And we know that Russians are not so sympathetic with journalists. So we are very happy for her, but we do know that the most of population of Mariupol, they are still there. And we are receiving really heartbreaking testimonies of people who are already out of the city. They are talking about hunger. They are talking about absence of water. They are talking about absence of any kind of connection. So they, in a way, they don't know what's happening. Yeah, they don't know what's happening and what's really happening. And what we know now is that Russians are taking some inhabitants, some citizens from Mariupol. They're transporting them to Russia. And they are filming them. They are making them say different version of reality on camera, saying that, for example, it was Azov battalion or Ukrainian Nazis who were shelling the city, all that kind of stuff. And yesterday I watched a video from Russian television, which accused of all the horrors which are happening in Mariupol. They were accusing directly Ukrainian army and Azov battalion.
Yeah, that's the usual tactics of Russians. So if you see these reports somewhere in the internet, just understand that this is a common tactics to bomb the city and then blame the opponent or enemy for doing that. But Ukrainian army doesn't have so much missiles. Ukrainian army and doesn't have so much air force to bomb the city. You can see the pictures of Mariupol. It cannot really be done with artillery only. So it's basically a city erased from the face of the earth, unfortunately.
And let's underline once again that the Russian army is doing all this horror with Russian-speaking areas, regions. I mean, with Mariupol, with Kharkiv, pretending that they are defending Russian-speaking population. And we think that this is a time to stop any kind of illusion about that. And I think that we would agree with what Volodymyr Zelensky told 2 days ago. He was communicating with foreign press. And he said that, yes, indeed, Russians can take our cities or our towns, why not? But they can do that at price of destroying everything and everybody. So they are not cities they are taking, but just deserts, these dead deserts, these ruins, without any people and without any buildings. That's what they're doing. So they're bringing death everywhere they come. So this is their way to proceed. Unfortunately, what we see in Mariupol and partly in Kharkiv, they're shelling the city just to destroy everything, and then they can say that they occupy. I don't know. They don't occupy cities. They occupy ruins. They occupy deserts without any people. That's unfortunately the price for their domination.
Yes, but Ukrainians are resisting, and each day they publish, Ukrainian army is publishing the figures about Russian losses. So on the 23rd of March, the number of Russian losses in personnel is over 15,000 people, 15,600 people, 500 tanks, 517 tanks, over 1,500 armored vehicles, 267 artillery systems. What else? How about planes?
More than 100
101 aircraft.
No, more than. I've heard 105 already.
Maybe.
Because at least 6 planes today.
Yeah, maybe. Yesterday it was obviously the 100 over Mariupol, 124 helicopters, so over 1,000 vehicles, 70 fuel tanks, etc. So what is important to know that Russians have lost more personnel, according to Ukrainian estimates, that in less than a month of a war than Soviet army has lost in Afghanistan in 10 years. Yeah, and then this is remarkable. What is important also that Russians are not publishing the number of their losses, but it was interesting a few days ago. Komsomolskaya Pravda, Russian newspaper, published an information that about 10,000 Russian soldiers have been killed, and it was reference to Russian military of defense. And then this publication was deleted. So Russians are saying that it was a hacker attack of Ukrainians who just put these figures. Maybe this was it, but maybe not. Maybe this is how they took the information, the secret information, and then published.
But at the same time, 10,000 or 15,000 people, soldiers that killed in Ukraine. This will not stop Russia today. At least we know that during the meeting which took place yesterday, Putin and his proxies, they were talking, and Putin said that up to 50 dead soldiers, that's a normal price for victory. So they still have some psychological, I don't know how to say it, they are ready to pay much more in terms of human lives on their side. This is not, and they are in lack of of arms and military equipment much more than they regret their losses, because what we see in terms of missiles, they're already using these high-tech missiles, which could mean that they are already in short of these normal missiles. So they're using a quite expensive material just to keep hitting Ukrainian cities, just to show that they're capable of. But at the same time, there is information coming from many sources, and from American sources as well, from Pentagon, saying that Russian army has less than 90% of these capacities at that very moment, starting, if we take, so from the beginning of the war. So it is huge for them, huge losses in terms of tanks, in terms of missiles, in terms of all this logistics. So they are really suffering. And on one hand, this is a good news, because it means that they are not progressing so fast as they would like to, and they almost stopped it at that very moment, but they could try to escalate in a different way. And what we see, and let's talk about that, there is an important clash with Poland, because Poland announced that they would suggest a project of peacekeeper mission to Ukraine, international one. But they were trying to show this idea to Joseph Biden first, and then if he approves, then to make something of that. And we are waiting for results, but we also are attentive to Russian reaction. The Russian reaction was immediate. In fact, today Lavrov said that if only Poland or any other NATO country sends any kind of peacekeepers here, they would interpret that like a direct clash with between Russia and NATO country. So they are ready. And what we also observe with very much tension is that what's happening in Belarus, because there were many times Belarus was almost entering the war, but still they are not in the war, in this direct war. But now we know that, and according to NATO information, that maybe Putin will push once again Lukashenko to participate in this war, and maybe the mission for Belarusian army would be to cut Ukraine from this military supplies in the West. Maybe it will be their mission. Belarusian army is weak. It never participated in any kind of war, in any kind of combat, so we are optimistic about that, but they can still create some problems for Ukrainians.
Yes, because they can put the Western Ukraine at risk, for example, Volyn or Galicia. But frankly, yes, when you talk with the Ukrainian military about Belarusian invasion, they're just laughing.
They're laughing, yeah.
Yes,
they're making jokes about that. Come on, yeah. To start this war, you'll still have some more. They
don't take it seriously. But maybe some of the Belarusians would just surrender to Ukrainian army and will join the Ukrainian army. By the way, there are lots of Belarusian volunteers in the Ukrainian army as well. So what else? What else can we say? Yes,
we are waiting for summit.
We are waiting for NATO summit tomorrow, 24th of March, and Zelensky will participate in this summit.
And Joe Biden is traveling to Poland.
Yes,
am I mistaken?
And a few days ago, Zelensky talked to public broadcasters, many public broadcasters across the world. It was a very interesting conversation because Zelensky shows again and again that, well, this image that he used to win the election, right, in 2019, that I'm one of you, I'm one of us, I'm one of these Ukrainian people, I'm not above them. It works very well right now, right? So there's a huge difference between how Putin communicates, like I'm above all that, and there is a huge distance between this Tsar, this dictator, and all the others, and how Zelensky communicates. So very little distance, very horizontal relations, etc. And there were many interesting statements in this interview, which are also kind of revealing the state of mood of Zelensky. What do you think?
Yeah, in fact, some points were even contradictory. At least they were discussed in the Ukrainian society. For example, he was talking about referendum, and with the question, what should Ukraine do with the territories? But we are often asked about why all these negotiations during the war. So this is something maybe strange, to have such a cruel war, such a severe bombing, such a genocide, I don't know how to name it, what's happening in Mariupol, and at the same time they are talking. And we are frequently asked why, what's the interest of this talk? And my response would be, I might be mistaken, but we do remember how Ukrainian side was negotiating for Minsk agreements for 8 years, and never during these 8 years, Ukrainian delegation made any concessions. You know, we did know the plan of Russia. The plan of Russia was quite clear. It was to attach the whole Ukraine to these occupied territories and to impose these controlled areas and their rules to the whole Ukraine. And we talked for 8 years. So this is Ukrainian style diplomacy, just to talk in any circumstances, to show that we are able to talk and to explain, as Zelensky calmly explained to these foreign journalists, saying that, look, I'm ready to talk to Putin, but I'll explain him the most important thing about this war. And the most important thing that he can destroy Ukraine. He can destroy Ukraine. But while destroying Ukraine, he will also destroy himself and Russia. So this is the main message. So this is the main message of Zelensky. And another important message is that it was quite clear for me. He said that there will be no concessions about territorial integrity it includes Crimea and Donbass. He said that, okay, as far as we stop shelling and this direct invasion and the Russian army should go home, and we can postpone talks about Crimea and Donbass to some kind of later, but no concessions real. So maybe it is kind of compromise he's trying to attract. But we do know that people who represent Russia in these talks, in these negotiations, they are not leaders. In Russia, they are just people sent by Russia just to negotiate, just to have some talks. This is not something serious for Russia itself, and we do know that they violate everything possible during the negotiations. So this is different track, this is diplomatic track, separate from war. And we do know that real negotiations, they are decided on the battlefield. In fact, what's going on the battlefield is times more important to any kind of agreements or promises made in these negotiations.
Yes, and Zelensky, it's interesting that how he every day communicates with Ukrainians. He every day makes the videos, and what we're trying to explain to you, foreign journalists, is that of course he's a kind of a now the leader of the nation. Obviously, he's now having 93 or something % of support, even despite there are some voices of criticism, but even people who voted against him. I just remember, for example, yesterday's post of Serhiy Zhadan, our genius poet and writer, and Zhadan was very critical of Zelensky. He even made a song hinting that Zelensky will actually have the same destiny as Yanukovych and go to Rostov. So there is this skepticism of patriotic Ukrainian society, intelligentsia. There was the skepticism with regard to Zelensky. But I think yesterday, after this, one of the statements that Zelensky said that Russia will only conquer Ukraine when it exterminate everybody, Zhadan said, "Well, this is my president," and this is how society is also evolving. So back to his messages during this interview one day ago. We are defending of Zelensky to public broadcasters. We are defending our country, but are doing this inhumane way. We are not torturing people, and this is very important. Our people is our key defender. Our people is our security alliance. So the kind of a hint to NATO. What else? During COVID pandemics, I understood that if something serious happens, we can stay in a small circle of a few states. This is what happened now. So he kind of stays, despite all the support, but he stays very critical of international community. The world has already changed, and public opinion will be stronger than any leader. But now leaders are afraid of their own people. Mm-hmm. And
this is very important.
This is very important because Zelensky is somebody who is showing himself as a real democrat. What he's saying, narodovladya. So narodovladya,
addressing people, not governments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Narodovladya is direct translation from the Greek democracy, the power of the people. And he's saying that basically, look at, for example, American society supporting no-fly zone, and America not doing that. German society supporting, arms supplies or whatever else, and German government is not doing that. So he's criticizing, other governments for not really following the people.
And he's popular within people. I mean, European people, and I think this is an extremely strong message, in fact, because he's addressing people like he did here in Ukraine when he won the election. He's addressing foreign people. I mean, people like ordinary people. He's addressing every government, every parliament every day. It was today he's addressing Assemblée Nationale in France. Before it was Bundestag. Before it was Israel. Before it was American Congress. So many parliaments. But at the same time, his message, they are hitting best, in my opinion, these people. I mean, ordinary people, and we do see, according to what sociology says, is that people are supporting Ukraine much more than the government do. their respective governments do. So this is extremely important, and this is a good thing about what we call populism in Zelensky approach, because he was a kind of populist in the beginning. But this is a very good thing to play, because he knows that there is a kind of pressure, normal democratic pressure of people on the government, and in the long run, it is a good strategic idea.
Yes, as he says, people became authority in Ukraine and authority became people, and this is wonderful. Ukraine cannot implement Russia's ultimatums. We can only do it if we cease to exist.
Another thing to mention here is that he was not at all aggressive and not at all pathetic about what's going on in Ukraine. He had he had a right to be aggressive, saying that Russia is an enemy, will destroy Russia. He was not. He didn't have such kind of rhetorics.
Yeah, he's very human, calm right now.
Calm, human, and just showing what we are fighting for. We are fighting for a normal state, a tolerant state. We do behave normally with people. We don't want to destroy anybody. So this is something also important.
Yeah, so now we will probably end on this moment. One thing we want to advise you is if you want to help Ukraine, go to the website which was created by our friends, UkraineHelpers.com, UkraineHelpers.com, and you can also find it on our Twitter, UkraineWorld. This was Explaining Ukraine podcast. Tetyana Ogarkova from Ukraine Crisis Media Center and myself, Chief Editor of UkraineWorld.org. If you want to support us, you can do it on patreon.com/UkraineWorld. Stay with us and stand with Ukraine.